united.
We'll never be divided.
It's one of the most polarizing issues facing our state and country today. And with a renewed presidential push to detain and deport undocumented immigrants.
Since taking office, my administration has launched the most sweeping border and immigration crackdown in American history.
Texas leaders are also looking for more enforcement opportunities, they say, to combat crime.
To support that mission, I've ordered Texas state agencies to assist the Trump administration to arrest, jail, and deport illegal immigrants.
No, we need to see your warrant.
Sweeping moves critics say hurt some communities.
This distrust can lead to decreased crime reporting, reduced witness cooperation,
and affect our economy, healthcare, and schools.
We understand that we need to reform our immigration system.
Through multiple reports on air and online, we take a closer look at Texas immigration impact in a new Trump era. In recent months, we've seen detainment centers popping up city after city. Immigration raids and mass arrests are making headlines. Fear for some, policy decisions for others. This topic is divisive and frankly too big to tackle every angle. But we've put our entire team to work for this KXAN investigative special. We're telling the stories of how that shift is shaping Texas, often agreements quietly signed between federal and local law enforcement agencies. To understand that aspect, we started our digging far from the capital city in an area where such arrangements have existed for years. So we're heading about 6 hours outside of Austin, which is West Texas, right along the border. It's among the most desolate stretches along the U.S.-Mexico border.
Border checkpoint?
Yeah, I think it is a border checkpoint. The last bit of civilization, 25 miles from the Rio Grande. The only highway around, teeming with border patrol at every turn.
Hello. Gentlemen, immigration inspection. Everybody on board United States citizen?
Terrell County, Texas is one of the least populated counties in America. So sparse, the county seat isn't even incorporated. Sanderson's city limit, population 654. For years, residents have been quietly conscious of their proximity to politics.
A lot of sympathy for people who want to better their lives, but probably an anxiety of the violence coming through here. Also aware of the great poverty that is pushing people into all of our country.
But now, under President Trump's new administration, they're bracing for change as some local law enforcement predicts a rise in illegal immigration here soon.
We need to protect our borders, but I also, recognize that everybody's human.
It comes as federal and state enforcement efforts increase elsewhere, potentially pushing passage to this rough part of the border.
I think it's a tough place to safely cross into the United States here. It's a harsh environment.
Do you get questions from tourists about immigration?
Yes, I urge them to go to our cemetery. We have a section that is all unlabeled mounds of where immigrants have been found, and they've buried them. They couldn't find family, they couldn't find any ID on them.
Still, most here never come that close to encountering anyone on their own.
It's definitely a topic of discussion, mostly with the ranchers having migrants coming through their property.
The sprawling ranches between the town and the river are often the first to see signs of those who survive.
This is a real hot spot right here. It leads into a canyon to where they can kind of, conceal themselves.
Crossings are currently down here and along the entire southern border.
We had to pile up rocks because it's such a vulnerable place for a predator to get in, and what they do is they cut it, the coyote comes through and then lifts up one side of it, and they just come scampering under here.
This isolated acreage is one place with evidence of a recent increase in activity. What kind of challenges does it present for you when the fence does get broken or torn up?
I can lose my guard dogs, the goats can get out, and these animals can get in a lot easier. It takes an army to fix it like it was when it was brand new. And it's just It's devastating to me, you know, it's heartbreaking.
I anticipated we would start seeing more activity out here because those urban environments where we see the majority of those apprehensions, I figured it would push them this way. But we had a group 2 days ago that was detected on some of their camera systems. It's been so windy, a lot of times it'll blow out any dirt footprints or any sign that's left behind by the people. We often rely on our landowners to be our eyes and ears in these locations.
Their cooperation is also how Sheriff Thaddeus Cleveland accesses this private land, some of the most remote on the border. Once through, he and his 2 deputies rely on Border Patrol and their state partners to help them find and catch anyone here illegally.
It's really all of us working together, Texas Department of Public Safety, Highway Patrol troopers, Parks and Wildlife game wardens, and then Texas military forces that have been down here deployed in the county. So Terrell County, we have 54 miles of border with Mexico. We'll go on south of here to go down to the river, see an area that's actually utilized by illegal aliens to make their entry in the United States.
So where are we right now?
So this particular area is an area that we have seen a recent uptick in people crossing the border illegally. Specifically right here at what we call Bone Water. We're at the Rio Grande River where there's some water for people to drink, but once they get north of this area, if they don't know where they're going or they don't have a guide that's leading them the way, that they may not have water for days. From that point, they can either be picked up there by a smuggler who's coming from another part of Texas or even coming from another state.
A former Border Patrol agent himself, Sheriff Cleveland has helped recover bodies in the desert
¿Te duele?
and rescued others lost and barely alive.
¿Cómo?
Mi estómago.
¿Qué?
¿No traes tantita agua que me regales?
¿Cómo?
Agua.
Sí, yo tengo agua.
We saw 6 backpackers carrying the big backpacks. They're drug runners.
No, they're not.
But even with longtime locals, he says there's often still a misconception about who's crossing here.
We haven't had a drug seizure in 5 years.
Well, what the hell are they? What?
Clothes, food.
What has drug seizure been like here?
I can look anybody in the eye and tell them that it's not crossing here.
So who are most of the people who are crossing in your county?
Out here, we typically catch accompanied juveniles. That means they're with their father, their brother, an uncle, something like that. But again, the vast majority are people no different than us that are coming north to work. But I've also apprehended those that do have criminal records. They're those that committed crimes in the United States, and of course, that's what this administration said they were going to target.
One tool Terrell County has to detect that, an agreement with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. It's called a 287G, a program allowing local and state agencies to enforce federal immigration law. Here specifically in the county jail.
It allows a deputy to get training, and then we'll have a computer system that they can enroll people that we catch to see if they've been previously apprehended and to find out where they're from. And if they're not from the United States, then we can hold that person for ICE.
There are 3 types of 287G agreements that local law enforcement agencies can sign with ICE. The first is the jail enforcement model, which is what exists here in Terrell County. And then you have the warrant service officer program and the task force model. We break down the differences, plus explain why several Texas agencies are signing on after President Trump took office again, and why some are bowing out after signing their initial agreements. Coming up.
Sir, this is an executive order entitled Protecting the American People Against Invasion, which again deals with the southern border and the unprecedented admission of illegal aliens across the southern border.
On his first day back in the White House, President Trump signed an extensive executive order paving the way, in part, for more 287G agreements across the country. During his first term, dozens of Texas law enforcement agencies signed such agreements with ICE. But the state saw no new agreements during the Biden administration. That quickly changed during the first 100 days of Trump's second term. Following the state attorney general's lead, at least 40 Texas entities voluntarily signed or renewed 287G partnerships in that short span, with more awaiting approval.
The chair now lays out Senate Bill 8, and recognizes its author, our colleague Senator Schwertner, to explain the measure.
And this legislative session, some state lawmakers, like Senator Charles Schwertner, have pushed proposals to require other agencies to sign up soon.
Remember, Senate Bill 8 mandates that county sheriffs in counties over 100,000 population enter into a written agreement with ICE under Section 287G of the Immigration and Nationality Act.
We'll open public testimony on Senate Bill 8.
SB 8 will force our local law enforcement officials to shift their focus away from keeping our communities safe to go play the role of federal ICE agents.
And it's not their sole job either. They'll be doing other jobs because they're not constantly on the ICE machine.
Obviously, this 287G program is all about safety and protection for the people of this country.
This law amounts to selling our local law enforcement to the federal government.
A 287G agreement essentially deputizes local, county, or state police to be force multipliers for ICE, using 3 models. Jail enforcement lets agencies interrogate people they've already arrested to determine immigration status, then issue ICE detainers. The warrant service officer model lets officers make immigration-related arrests of people already in their jail themselves. And the recently revived task force model allows officers to enforce immigration laws during their routine duties in their communities. Additional responsibilities some immigration experts say increasingly move beyond the typical roles in local policing.
It's just an added layer of nuance that they're going to have to operate within very efficiently. And the stakes of error in immigration enforcement are very high.
What implications constitutionally exist when something like that happens?
So the primary constitutional concerns that are very predictable are things like equal protection and due process. What local enforcement of federal immigration law creates is an issue that some individuals might be treated differently under the law because they look like an immigrant, whatever that might mean.
When local law enforcement is perceived as an extension of federal immigration enforcement, it erodes trust within immigrant communities.
It sows seeds of disengagement and disconnection.
In a country that's built on immigration, I ask you all to think twice about the intent behind this legislation.
There were people in the hearing that clearly didn't want this bill. They talked about the way that it might impact the immigrant communities here in Texas. What do you think about that?
Well, I asked them if they want criminal aliens running around and causing violence and crime against citizens that they know, Texans they know. We've heard stories after stories ever since Biden has done his open border policy of criminal aliens that have been arrested and released and go on to commit even more heinous crimes.
There were hundreds of thousands of illegal crossings a month, and virtually all of them, including murderers, drug dealers, gang members.
Republican leaders nationally and in Texas have highlighted individual emotional cases.
No, we need to see your warrant.
When justifying their pitch for increased overall immigration enforcement.
12-year-old Jocelyn Ungery.
A brilliant 22-year-old nursing student named Lakin Riley.
She was brutally raped and murdered by 2 illegal immigrants with ties to Trinidad.
Stolen from us by a savage illegal alien gang member.
What do you see as the reality when it comes to those arrests?
When we're talking about the crime of illegal immigration, it is a crime of entry, of being here. I think the idea that we're going to gather up all these criminals, all these undocumented immigrants, it acts as if all these people are doing these terrible things to threaten public safety. There are plenty of studies that show that immigrants in the United States commit crimes at lower rates than U.S. citizens.
One of the latest such studies from the National Institute of Justice last year specifically examined Texas Department of Public Safety data, finding undocumented immigrants were arrested at less than half the rate of native-born U.S. citizens for violent and drug-related crimes. When we asked 287G participating agencies in Texas to provide details on their arrests and complaints about the program, some declined to provide any records and, pointing to a rule in their agreements, referred us to ICE for information. ICE also declined our interview requests, saying in a statement simply, "There's no way that all these operations could take place without our state and local partners." Still, we found in recent years some participating agencies, like the Burnett County Sheriff's Office, became inactive with their 287G agreements, telling us they weren't getting much out of it, and citing the cost, training time, and resources as challenges. Another in Central Texas, neighboring Williamson County, where Senator Schwertner lives, discontinued its agreement altogether after 2021. Williamson County Sheriff's Office is one that currently has no agreement. What do you think about that being your home county?
Well, I've spoken to the sheriff actually over the weekend, and I think we are on the same page regarding the need to enforce our immigration laws.
Is there a possibility that Williamson County could enter into a new 287G agreement in the future?
I would say we're considering that now. The main concern I had was the expenses that would fall back on our county as far as sending an officer to the East Coast for a month for training. Who's taking their place, who's doing their work here at home, so we're paying someone else overtime to fill in. And that was the concerns that I would have, burdens that would be on the county.
Needless to say, this could potentially put a very harsh monetary strain on our budgets every year.
It cost me $10,000 per jailer that are 287G certified.
But we're currently in the process of applying to become a 287G county. I do want to do what's right and try to protect the citizens in the state of Texas to the best of my ability.
So the concern is that this would in effect become an unfunded mandate?
It could be, yes, ma'am. That's the association's worry. We support the program. We support removing criminal aliens. Please know that.
Yes, this is a mandate, and I will defend that day and night.
Well, that is a concern. Obviously, anytime we ask our local counties to do something, there is a cost associated with it. But it's defrayed by this grant program. And really, in my opinion, it's an obligation of local law enforcement to enforce immigration laws.
Is that too much to ask? And what amount of money is worth that? That's the question I think we should be asking ourselves.
It's kind of been an underutilized program.
Right, most definitely. So when they're initially encountered, they're arrested and turned over to Border Patrol. So there's not a huge need.
Back in Terrell County, Sheriff Cleveland has so many other border resources and partners, he hasn't had to rely on his 287G agreement, but says he's considering renewing its use if border crossings and crime increase.
I don't see the cartels just throwing up their arms and saying, okay, we give up, we're going away, we're not going to pass people or dangerous drugs. At some point, something's gonna shift and start happening. I want to be available in case there is a need and we can help out.
Other states, including Florida and Georgia, have also passed or are considering legislation requiring law enforcement agencies seek 287G agreements. 3 months into President Trump's second term, ICE had signed more than 450 agreements in 38 states. By then, Texas had the second most agreements in the country, with more than 70 and another 10 pending. There has been criticism over the years that the 287G program lacks transparency. A recent ACLU report called on participating agencies to better track and address complaints about racial profiling and other civil rights violations. Separately, a congressional bill filed this year by Texas Representative Michael Cloud calls for several improvements to the 287G program, including publishing yearly reports to track its success. Officials have also been discussing how to make the training shorter and more regional, which could further cut expenses, along with any grant program here in Texas that might be available. And ICE also reminds agencies it pays for their training, but not necessarily the other costs associated with it. Online now, we speak one-on-one with a former 287G trainer who walks us through that process. That interview can be found in this story, which is part of our team's digital investigative project, Undocumented. Learn how we crowdsourced for viewer stories, check out the Spanish translations of our reports, and listen to our podcast episode on this topic. Plus, explore more than a dozen stories we produced to take a closer look at the impact in Texas. It's all online now at KXAN.com/undocumented. Coming up, as lawmakers consider legislation like that surrounding immigration in Texas, one state leader's executive order last fall is already showing us a lot about the healthcare cost among undocumented people living here. The new data when this investigative special returns. As we mentioned earlier, the number of people crossing is down throughout the U.S. border with Mexico. For perspective, from late 2021 to the end of 2024, the Biden administration had a monthly average of almost 187,000 encounters. That's 94% more than the around 11,000 average in Trump's first 2 months back in office. Border security and immigration are still a focus at the state capitol, though, and those local law enforcement partnerships we mentioned aren't the only proposals up for consideration this legislative session. Online now, our team dives into immigration-related bills on bail reform and more. Plus, we take a closer look at sanctuary city concerns across the state and what life is like now on the border in counties that voted for President Trump in the last election. Just look for our Undocumented project on KXAN.com. Since late last year, Texas hospitals have been asking patients if they are U.S. citizens. It's an executive order from Governor Greg Abbott. He says to learn the cost of care for undocumented patients, and early data just released reveals a 1-month snapshot from November when the state said there were at least 30,000 undocumented patient visits recorded statewide, costing nearly $119 million, with some hospitals yet to report. As the data collection continues, investigator Arzo Dost learned who's worried about long-term health impacts.
For months, we've called and emailed dozens of clinics and hospitals in Central Texas asking about health impacts if immigrants living here are weary of going to their doctor or the ER, and what guidance has been provided if ICE agents show up. There was a common theme: silence and hesitation to speak or attract attention, except from a few like the Luis D. Atabey Midwifery Project, or LAMP, the Community Reproductive Health Clinic, created to meet the needs of people of color, tells me since hospitals started asking the citizenship question, many clients are delaying care or even avoiding emergency treatment.
People are fearful.
It doesn't surprise the Texas Civil Rights Project, which has been educating people about their rights, following Governor Greg Abbott's executive order.
Work to put out resources to let people know in the community that they have a right to decline to answer this question about their citizenship status.
We're trying to gather information, so first we can determine the magnitude of the challenge that we face.
Hospitals must tell patients their response will not impact receiving quality care, and personal information will not be reported. Still, it's even caught some citizens off guard.
Are you a U.S. citizen or lawful in the United States? Yes, no, or no response.
Shannon Jamrock says she was surprised to see the question at Dell Children's Medical Center in North Austin. She'd rushed her son to the ER in March after he fell off his bike and hurt his wrist.
It was asked right away before we could sign any other documents to get him seen. I just feel it's uncalled for. I don't understand the point of it. I don't understand why any child needs to have that answer to receive care.
What was your response?
I clicked no response. You know, you seek emergency care for your child and have them have their citizenship questioned when they walk in the door. It takes you back. Why does that matter? Who are you going to tell?
We asked Dell Children's repeatedly about the question and the data the hospital is collecting, but they directed us to the Texas Hospital Association. In a statement, THA told us, in part, hospitals are required by law to treat anyone who comes through the door, regardless of ability to pay, regardless of their demographics. The fact that hospitals are required to collect this data should not be a deterrent for people in need of care.
Quorum's present.
During a recent hearing at the Capitol, THA told state lawmakers it had concerns with proposed related legislation.
We would like the legislation to affirmatively state that we are not required to verify patients' answers, and then due to the threat of potential security concerns among hospitals that treat a high number of undocumented persons, we would respectfully request that individual hospitals' reports be exempt from public information disclosure so they will not be targeted.
Lawmakers this session have considered solidifying the required question and the rules surrounding it beyond the governor's order and into state law.
It's a simple question that's being asked, and their care is not being affected.
If you choose not to tell your immigration status, then people know you didn't tell it, and then they think maybe you're hiding it. So like for me, if I went to the doctor, I wouldn't fill it out because ain't nobody's business. I need for the doctor to pay attention to my health, not whether I'm a U.S. citizen.
The hospitals are not reporting any individual information to us.
You know, there's no positive duty to disclose that information to ICE, but neither is there any guarantee that it couldn't happen.
Florida has required the question by law since 2023. Last year, it reported less than 1% of hospital and emergency room patients who answered its question were undocumented, out of more than 12.4 million total patients statewide. Throughout all of 2024, hospitals provided nearly $660 million in healthcare services to those undocumented patients, out of nearly $87 billion spent on all patients.
It is such a small percentage.
State Representative Solomon Lalani, a doctor in the Houston area, has been watching the data and in an op-ed after Texas's order shared concerns.
Texans are not coming forward, so out of fear, they're not taking care of their illnesses, they're not managing their chronic problems, and it is becoming an emergency overall.
What does this mean for health outcomes in Texas?
People are not taking care of managing their diabetes or heart failure or blood pressure medicines. But then, on top of it, the psychic somatic illnesses that comes forward, depression, anxiety, that is playing a bigger role.
So listen, the concerns about that are completely unwarranted.
Governor Abbott blames what he calls the Biden administration's open border policies and recently told us he's demanding Texas taxpayers be reimbursed.
I think there would be every reason why the state of Texas would have the right to sue the United States government because it is the United States government's responsibility to pay for any of the costs concerning illegal immigration, and Texas healthcare facilities should not bear that burden.
The Texas Health and Human Services Commission, which collects the data under the governor's order, wouldn't agree to an on-camera interview with us, but said future reports will include full quarterly data, with an annual report out in January 2026. Arzo Dost, KXAN Investigates.
The citizenship question also puts a focus on the state's uninsured. Texas 2036, a nonpartisan public policy organization, says looking at available data of around 5 million uninsured Texans, an estimated 15% are undocumented. The think tank says the majority of the state's uninsured are here legally, which has a bigger cost impact for hospitals. From hospitals to another place policy once protected. We take a closer look at the impact to schools in Texas after the latest immigration enforcement efforts. That's coming up.
We have some breaking news right now. We've learned that a family of 5, including 2 U.S.-born children, were detained by ICE after a traffic stop in front of Dobie Middle School.
In recent days, headlines in Austin, near a campus where the district says 80% of students are Hispanic.
Texas Department of Public Safety troopers pulled the family over reportedly over expired tags and later turned the family over to Immigrations and Customs Enforcement.
With legal questions lingering in cases like that, school leaders across Texas say they're working to calm fear among the immigrant community.
Moms and their kids should feel safe going to middle school. We need our limited law enforcement resources to going to actually getting the bad guys.
It comes after the Trump administration ended a policy put in place more than a decade ago, discouraging ICE raids and arrests at schools and other protected locations.
That policy was rescinded to give ICE the ability to be able to make arrests in those communities at or near a location where somebody could be a danger to the community.
Austin ISD does have protocols if ICE agencies attempt to come on a campus, but said because it happened off campus, they had no additional information.
KXAN investigator Kelly Wiley learned concerns are now shifting from campus to instead what students might find missing at home.
Good morning, Lobos. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The day after President Donald Trump took office for his second term, staff at Lehman High School in Hays County say they fielded calls from panicked parents. Lehman's student body is mostly Hispanic.
Okay, Jelena. Israel. Here. Joseph. Here. Okay, and Daphne. Yes, okay.
The U.S. Department of Homeland Security had rescinded a 2011 policy around what's called protected spaces. The point of the policy was to ensure immigration enforcement actions do not occur nor are focused on sensitive locations like schools and churches, except when absolutely necessary.
We saw a lot of fear.
When that protection was gone,
Our immigrant population was scared. We had a lot of teachers have conversations with parents saying, well, we don't know if we want to send our kids.
data we analyzed from Central Texas school districts with the highest Hispanic populations, like Hayes CISD and Del Valley ISD, shows in the days after the policy change, the attendance dipped. The sudden change might have been due to seasonal illnesses or other factors. The data we obtained did not indicate why. But the drop in attendance at the districts with the most Hispanic students was more prominent than those with lower Hispanic populations, like Eanes ISD and Lake Travis ISD.
Maybe they're going to pick me up as I'm coming through the car line.
In any case, it was short-lived, with attendance bouncing back after a couple of days.
We had to quickly say, hey, that's not the case, or, we're not, I don't know that we could actually, that ICE could actually do that, or that they had the manpower to do that.
Months later, Hayes CISD leaders haven't seen a raid on campus. The more present concern for staff, like Counselor Jessica Salcido, is what will happen to students' families while they're at school, as immigration officials work to deport more people living in the U.S. illegally.
I have a student that his mom was deported. Again, he was at school, got home, and she was gone. It's really sad. It's really sad. I think for me, because of my position, is the mental health of these kids. That is my concern. I could see it just tumbling, and so in every which way. They want to go home knowing that their parents are going to be there, that they're going to be able to have dinner, that they're going to be able to take them in at night, that they're going to be there when they wake up in the morning.
In San Antonio, Viridiana Carrizales runs M Schools, a nonprofit focused on helping undocumented students in Texas and across the country navigate public schools. Once an undocumented student herself, she says she's received calls from families wanting to withdraw their students over fear of deportation.
This is one of the text messages that I've received. I wanted to ask you if you know of a school online that I can enroll my daughter. She's in 8th grade. With all that is happening right now with immigration, we're really afraid, and I want to take her out of school. One of the things that I told them is that in many ways, our children are more protected in school than they are at home. Because if immigration comes to the school, there's a protocol, and they're going to be speaking with attorneys in the school district. When they come to our home, they're going to be speaking with us. That also instilled a sense of urgency for us to make sure that schools, in fact, had those protocols in place. Because I couldn't tell a family, your student is safe at school, if I knew that the school has not taken the necessary steps to make that true.
School districts like Hayes and Austin ISD have published their policies explaining how they will handle ICE if agents come to their campuses. But not all districts in the state have taken a public and proactive approach on the potential for ICE to enter their schools.
ICE raids have no place in our Texas schools.
Since the federal policy change, State Representative Ramon Romero with the Mexican American Legislative Caucus has been pushing for the Texas Education Agency to issue guidance for all school districts.
Commissioner Morath, respond to our letter and let us know how you too are working to protect our Texas kids.
In response, Texas Education Commissioner Mike Morath wrote back, saying the state expects school districts to follow the law, including maintaining secure facilities and not allowing visitors without a legitimate reason to be on campus.
This is the most vague, simple response. Talk to your own administrators. They have general counsel.
Morath also said campus personnel must not impede federal officials.
Well, with what component? If they have a warrant, or just simply comply with whatever their actions are.
TEA declined our interview request, but in an email, the agency said it provided the same guidance to the districts that asked.
So these are the red cards that we give to families every time we do a session. It tells them what their constitutional rights are. and we have thousands of cards in multiple languages.
Carrizales says she's already seen what many undocumented immigrants fear becoming a reality in Texas.
A relative was dropping their kids to school when they were detained by immigration.
She and school officials across the state are encouraging parents to leave at least 3 to 5 emergency contacts in the case of a parent or primary guardian being picked up by immigration authorities.
This could be the difference between, having a child come back home to somebody that they know, to their relative or a trusted person, or not.
See, you didn't even need my help. You found it all on your own. Usually school is a safe space for them, and now they're hearing that it might not be. It throws off the entire academic success that they're having. The environment, the learning environment is stressed. It's hard. It's really, really difficult to have to deal with the policies that affect our kids directly.
ICE has not answered whether its agents have attempted to go onto public school campuses since the new Trump administration's policy change, but told our media partners at Border Report in a statement, ICE enforcement resources are based on intelligence-driven leads, and ICE officers do not target persons indiscriminately. We've also seen no reports from districts, the TEA, or other media outlets of ICE entering campuses in Texas. But as we mentioned at the top of this story, just days ago, ICE was involved in detaining a family of 5 after a traffic stop outside an Austin middle school. We have more details on that case and questions surrounding the legal process online at KXAN.com. We know immigration enforcement is impacting higher education too. As of the end of April, we confirmed the federal government had either revoked visas or terminated the immigration status of at least 104 students at universities across Texas. Our reporting partner, the Texas Tribune, reported at least 252 at that time. Since then, we've learned that the U.S. government has reinstated the legal status for more than 1,200 students across the country, including multiple UT Austin students.
What do we know about why a student's immigration status could change?
Well, the federal government hasn't said how it's determining that, but one example we know, the Trump administration has in the past called participation in pro-Palestine protests anti-Semitic. And the Department of Homeland Security has said it would consider anti-Semitic activity on social media as grounds for denying immigration benefit requests.
More about that in this story online. Still ahead, from education to the economy, how state leaders and immigration experts say these moves will impact our workforce when Undocumented, a KXAN investigative special, returns. Following recent deportations of immigrants living in the U.S. illegally, we're exploring the potential ripple effect on the Texas economy. And for those profiting off undocumented labor, KXAN investigator Matt Grant found uneven enforcement when it comes to punishment.
Normally, we take all the jobs we can.
Yvonne and Mario say they came to Austin 25 years ago to escape violence, find work, and build a better life. Today, she's a cleaner. He's in construction.
My kids, they don't even know Mexico, so we feel this is our country.
We met this husband and wife through the Workers' Defense Project, a group fighting to improve working conditions. They wanted us to know their struggle. Low pay, taking whatever jobs are available on a given day, is a common story.
Yes, a lot of people, they have a fear right now.
Worried about deportations, they asked us to only use their first names and would not share their immigration status.
That is my fear because they are going to move the stability we already have.
The latest figures from the American Immigration Council in 2023 show around a quarter of Texas's skilled laborers and 17% of agricultural workers were undocumented. They are among the state's estimated 2 million undocumented immigrants who generated, according to the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, nearly $5 billion in state and local taxes in 2022.
Deportation efforts are giving a lot of our business leaders headaches, keeping a lot of folks up at night because a big portion of our economy is really reliant on undocumented workers.
What's going to happen if everybody disappears? Nobody's going to clean your building. Nobody's going to clean your house.
Cosa que uno no hace, uno quiere.
The construction companies, they are going to broke because the most of the immigrants employees, they are the hard workers.
Are many of the construction workers that you are with, are they undocumented, most of them?
Yeah.
The exact numbers today, however, are hard to know. The last time the Texas Comptroller's Office studied the economic impact of deportations was in 2006, when George W. Bush was president. It found losing 1.4 million workers then would have created a loss of nearly $18 billion in gross state product and shrunk the Texas economy for years. The issue hasn't been studied since, but this legislative session, Republican state lawmakers have called for a study on the economic impact of illegal immigration to the state.
We don't have data, and I'm just using cowboy logic. What I see every day.
Texas Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller oversees farming and keeps his ties to the Trump administration front and center. Like the president, he supports deportations.
Do you think that the ongoing deportation efforts will have an impact on Texas's economy?
Well, we've been doing this since January, and so far they haven't had any impact. Right now, the main focus is getting rid of the bad guys.
This eighth-generation Texas farmer and rancher says automation is also decreasing the need to hire immigrants when it comes to agriculture jobs.
People still think of a farmer as bib overalls and a straw hat chewing on a piece of hay, but we're not that anymore. We're agriculture 3.0. We have cows that milk themselves by robotic milkers. We have autonomous tractors that drive themselves. We used to use a lot of illegal labor at one time. We don't do that so much anymore.
Have you ever hired an illegal worker?
I have, years and years ago, yes.
What was the reasoning for it at the time?
I couldn't get any help. We couldn't get any help to get the crop in.
Later, Miller clarified,
I never knowingly hired an illegal.
That point, knowingly, is key to enforcing a federal law that makes it illegal to hire undocumented workers. And our review found employers who risk violating that law are rarely prosecuted. According to the last 4 years of Immigration and Customs Enforcement data on labor exploitation, there have been only 84 management-level indictments nationwide, among the 3,100 total cases initiated. A decade ago, ICE told Congress its focus was employers committing egregious violations dealing with critical infrastructure.
IDE, hell no! Donald Trump has got enough!
Now, a sign of possible change here in Texas. In February, agents raided this border area bakery, charging 2 owners with harboring immigrants who are in the country illegally.
This is a unique, different case from what we usually see.
Federal law prohibits any employer today from hiring an illegal alien.
States have little authority to enforce immigration law, but some can strip a business's license. In 2009, then Republican Senator Dan Patrick filed a bill to attempt that in Texas if a company was caught hiring undocumented workers and avoiding state taxes by paying cash under the table.
Some of those employers might consider it simply a cost of business to operate illegally, so that they may avoid necessary taxes like unemployment insurance.
That bill never made it out of committee, and Patrick, now Lieutenant Governor, didn't respond to our interview request, asking why he hasn't revisited the proposal in the years since.
We don't see CEOs round up. You see workers being rounded up.
We have our work cut out for us this session.
Democratic State Representative Armando Wally, the son of a Mexican immigrant, says he takes deportations and the uneven enforcement we uncovered personal.
Those folks would not be able to earn those high incomes without the sweat and the tears and the blood and sometimes the lives, particularly in construction, than the folks that are working on a daily basis.
We built Texas! We built Texas! We built Texas!
Mi nombre es Eva Marroquín.
This legislative session, workers like Eva Marroquín are speaking out against what they describe as harsh conditions in dangerous heat, sometimes for little or no pay. A construction site cleaner, she wouldn't elaborate, but says she's here legally. She worries about those who aren't and the jobs they'll leave behind.
The Texas economy is going to collapse. The workforce is going to see a huge dip in the construction industry, and because it is booming and it's so dynamic, it's really going to see the impact very quickly.
We have to take care of our farmers and hotels and various places where they need the people.
A few months into his second term, President Trump addressed labor shortage concerns, floating a plan to keep some undocumented farm and hotel workers in the country legally.
So a farmer will come in with a letter concerning certain people, saying they're great, they're working hard. We're going to slow it down a little bit for them, and then we're going to ultimately bring them back. They'll go out, they're going to come back as legal workers.
But workers like Mario and Yvonne say they're already here, helping lay the foundation of Texas's economy.
We don't understand why is a lot of persecution to us, because we don't come in to do anything wrong. We don't come in to do nothing, only to work.
Matt, we know the U.S. does have a legal alternative for seasonal guest workers, right?
Yes, an administration official tells us the president wants to improve the H-2A program, which has provided hundreds of thousands of temporary visas for agriculture jobs. Supporters say those temporary visas lessens the need to hire undocumented workers.
Have there been any concerns with the program?
Yes, a federal watchdog report found applications for farm workers are increasing, and that's led to less oversight of things like pay and safety, with just 30 audits of the program in 2023, down from around 500 5 years earlier.
All right, thank you, Matt. Staying in this country legally has become a challenge for many people. We explore the asylum backlog and court slowdown for some when Undocumented, a KXAN investigative special, returns.
I'm Talisa Trevino. I am a senior journalism student at the University of Texas, and I'm interning with KXAN Investigates this semester. My focus has been reporting on what the legal process of citizenship is for people coming to the United States and why it takes so long, and also understanding what resources are out there for people who are potentially facing immigration detention or at risk for it. Through the project, I've spoken with people who have gone through the citizenship process and are currently going through the citizenship process, as well as legal experts in the immigration related space. So I navigated this story through a podcast format, and in the podcast you'll hear from a mom who is fearful for her daughter potentially being deported because her daughter is undocumented in the United States. You will also hear from immigration legal resource experts who explain why it takes so long and also explain and break down what the process is for people coming to the United States.
As the Trump administration's deportation efforts move forward, we explore the impact on an already backlogged immigration system. Some people are waiting years for their asylum applications to process, while pending immigration court cases hit a record last year. KXAN investigator Avery Travis dug into the numbers in Texas and learned why experts say politics slow down the process even more.
Inside this Houston area home, there are small touches of Venezuela.
My brother, and well, myself, my mom.
But when Diego thinks of his home country,
it was a good life that I had when I was a kid.
He thinks of two different places.
The country that I was born in and raised.
Where he grew up, graduated from medical school, and became a doctor. But eventually,
that country didn't exist any longer. It didn't exist in every single way possible.
In 1999, the president of Venezuela began making major changes, overseeing a new constitution and using billions of dollars in oil money to fund government-run initiatives such as public housing and health clinics. By the late 2000s, economic growth stalled. A global drop in oil prices, along with accusations of government mismanagement and even corruption growing into the next presidency, pushed the country into a political and economic crisis, still plaguing it today.
You kind of become sort of a foreigner in your own country.
All the while, Diego's father worked with the political opposition. In 2014, while Diego was furthering his medical training on a temporary visa in Germany, he got a call that changed his life.
Out of the blue, your dad calls you and tells you, look, I got to flee because they were going to put me in military prison. I am a terrorist in the eyes of the Venezuelan state.
He said anyone connected to his father could be in danger.
So, what are you gonna do? I said, okay, well, I cannot go back there. I had a limited visa in Germany, and there was no place for me to go back to.
Eventually, he connected with a relative in the United States. He says he started with a temporary visa and eventually applied for asylum. Then, he says he began waiting to present his case to the U.S. government.
And, well, That never happened.
He's now one of nearly 1.5 million people across the U.S. seeking asylum with a pending case, according to federal data from fiscal year 2024.
It's very possible that the information and that the evidence in their case has grown stale. It's also possible that there could be changed circumstances in their country of origin. However, at this point, they've now established their lives here and have been living here for a decade, right?
Laura Flores-Dixit with American Gateways works to help people with affirmative asylum claims, meaning the U.S. government has not begun a removal case against them, and those with defensive claims, meaning their case has landed in immigration court. For years, the number of pending immigration cases nationwide has climbed from less than 500,000 cases a decade ago to a record high of 3.7 million in 2024. So far this year, the backlog has dropped just a bit, sitting at over 3.6 million. That's according to the Transactional Records Access Clearinghouse, a nonprofit organization at Syracuse University collecting and analyzing government records. Around 500,000 of those cases are in Texas, the state with the second largest backlog in the country after Florida.
Just at levels we've never seen before.
We spent a day inside Austin immigration attorney Mark Kinsler's busy law office, where children's toys, books, and motivational quotes fill the lobby, trying to ease clients' growing concerns about the recent heightened focus on deportation. He says it's hard to predict how the backlog will impact his clients from case to case.
So I have people waiting 10 years, and also people are going to go next week. And so it's really the arbitrariness and sort of it's very chaotic. There's no real rhyme or reason to it.
His cases, like most in Central Texas, end up here at the San Antonio Immigration Court. Right now, there are around 116,000 cases pending here. And while that backlog has actually gone down compared to the year prior, the backlog is growing at the Pearsall Immigration Court that's just an hour southwest of here. That court processes cases of people who are currently detained in immigration detention centers across our area.
We're talking about people who have been detained at times for 6 and 9 months without even ever having a preliminary hearing.
In an April memo, the Department of Justice gave legal guidance to fast-track cases in immigration court by allowing judges to drop certain asylum cases without a hearing. It said, quote, "Adjudicators are not prohibited from taking, and in fact should take, all appropriate action to immediately resolve cases on their dockets that do not have viable legal paths for relief or protection from removal." The push to clear the dockets comes as immigration courts around the country face vacancies. A study by the Congressional Research Service showed it would take an additional 700 judges to clear the backlog by 2032. That's more than double the number already working.
We needed to overhaul our system, and we didn't. We are still awaiting decades-long updates that we still need Congress to act on. So that's one main thing. We had a humanitarian need that we weren't ready to meet.
Jenny Murray says the system as a whole was not set up to process this many people. She's the president of the National Immigration Forum that works to bring together moderate and conservative voices across faith, law enforcement, and business who want to help reform the system. Murray believes the fight at the border has been used as a political football, preventing any immediate or long-term solutions to the backlog.
But you cannot just enforce your way through border solutions. You can have enforcement, but you also need to have personnel, technology, and then you need to robustly start to update the judicial system.
She says they'd like to see some money diverted from enforcement efforts at the southern border to instead pay for more immigration judges, asylum officers, or perform long overdue upgrades to the system.
And we need to be able to speed things up so that we can have a more efficient and humane process.
Diego says he believes the wait will be worth it.
I just like to think that this is going to pass, and I just need to hold on. Hold tight, very tight. And when the storm passes, I believe, well, perhaps not me, but my children, my grandchildren are going to profit from something that it's great and it's achievable for them.
You've reached out to the DOJ to ask about the backlog and some of these other questions over the last few months, right?
Yes, Josh, we're still awaiting a response from the DOJ. We'll, of course, update you online when we hear back. In recent days, though, President Trump has addressed this on social media, saying, quote, "We cannot give everyone a trial because to do so would take, without exaggeration, 200 years. We would need hundreds of thousands of trials for the hundreds of thousands of illegals we are sending out of the country. Such a thing is not possible to do.
So clearly, a lot of these cases are very complicated, including Diego's.
Yes, in fact, he's one of hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans benefiting from a protection called temporary protected status. That's granted to nationals of certain foreign countries that have ongoing armed conflicts, natural disasters, or other extraordinary conditions.
And we know the Trump administration has moved to end that designation for people from several countries.
Yes, they've cited national security concerns, but this is currently playing out in the courts.
Speaking of the courts, earlier this week we said border crossings were down dramatically in the first few months of Trump's second term compared to the majority of Biden's term in office, though the numbers then were trending down. If fewer people are crossing and being apprehended, does that give the court system a chance to catch up?
Officials tell us it's still a wait and see whether those numbers will stay this low.
So the trend in crossings ebbs and flows.
Yes, for instance, during Trump's first term, illegal immigration at the southern border dropped sharply after he entered office, similar to the start of his second term. This is according to Border Patrol data. Then it began to rise steadily, month after month, dropped during the pandemic, and actually rose again in the months before he left office.
We'll continue tracking the trends online as part of our digital investigative project, Undocumented. There, you can also learn how we crowdsourced for viewer stories, check out the Spanish translations of our reports, and listen to our podcast episode on this topic. Plus, explore more than a dozen stories we produced to take a closer look at the impact in Texas. It's all online now at kxan.com/undocumented. Our coverage on this topic will continue as we follow developments across Texas and the nation. I'm Josh Hinkle. Thank you for watching this KXAN Investigative Special.